So continuing from that last lecture, we're going to talk about evolutionary fitness. And it's important to realize that fitness is relative to the environment that you're in, and then there is no trait that's going to make you always be better fit no matter what. So fitness refers to an individual's success in reproducing or passing on their genes to an offspring related to other members of that population. So if you live in an environment and you are successful at passing on your genes, you are fit in an evolutionary, from an evolutionary perspective. So people have looked at these Galapagos finches before and after a drought, and they found that beaks got 6% larger than before the drought, which means that in drought conditions, larger beaks are preferred, or they're more fit. That means that you can pass on your genes more often. So this drought in the Galapagos led to a change in allele frequencies in the next generation. So like I was saying earlier, there is no fittest phenotype for any organism. These traits are all specific to the environment that you're in, and it favors survival and reproductive success under those conditions. So if you have a fish on land, it's not going to do super well. Dumb example, I know, but if you have me swimming in the ocean with sharks, I'm not going to do super well, whereas I might do better, just on land in my normal habitat. There is no fittest phenotype for any organism. There's our friend, the Galapagos fish. We're going to spend a little bit more time talking about him today, but they're great for studying these things because they live on islands with different conditions. And after the drought, their beaks actually evolved to get bigger in a very short period of time. So 1976, this was your average beak depth of these Galapagos finches. Depth is just referring the top to the bottom measurement here. And you can see this is pre-drought. This was the average beak depth. Okay, but during the drought and after the drought, you can see that these beaks actually got considerably deeper. So this was before the drought, this was after the drought here, and there are less individuals, probably because many of them died during the drought, but you can see that there's a definitive shift between before the drought and after the drought by several millimeters. So kind of hand in hand with this idea, there are several mechanisms of selection. There is stabilizing selection, directional selection, and disruptive selection. And we're going to kind of talk about each of these. So stabilizing selection, intermediate characteristics are favored, and so they do better. So the example that they give is birth weight. If you weigh a ton, like let's say you're a 15-pound baby when you're born, you're much more likely to die, right? You're just too big. If you are underweight, you're much more likely to not do well as well. If you're premature or if you're just very small, you're not likely to do well. And so babies that are intermediate, babies that are average actually do well, and this is called stabilizing selection. So these intermediate phenotypes, these babies that are between 5 and 8 pounds usually do quite well, or I should say die less often, which is pretty sad, but yeah, intermediate phenotypes do well. We also have directional selection, which is where one of two possible extremes is favored. So that would be dark-colored peppered moths versus light-colored moths during the Industrial Revolution. Another example of this would be these little clams. Okay, so the older you get, the more ridges they have, and so you can see as fossils are getting newer, or more and more close to modern times, they're having fewer of these ribs. They're having fewer of these, I guess you would say, indents on their shells, and you would call that a type of directional selection as well. You also have disruptive selection, which is where it sort of hollows out the middle and selects on the more extreme phenotypes. So an example of this would be West African birds, with large ones or small ones being larger small beaks being advantageous, but no intermediate ones being advantageous, probably because they can eat